Is everybody alive out there today? Everybody feel good? I want to thank our hosts, the CannaTech group, what world-class events they put on, and look at the great people in this room and the collaboration with many of the partners and the Inter-Canna Alliance events that we had earlier this week. Really just a good group of people, and there's a lot of momentum. And one of the reasons that this event is so important, and events like this are so important, is because when you're building a brand new industry in different parts of the world, you have to work together. Everybody wants to carve out their own lane and go out and get that thing, but you have to work together. It's this concept of co-opetition, not competition, but co-opetition. I need you, you need me, we need to work together. There's enough space and enough opportunity in this space, and this space is getting hot. Hemp is king right now, and that's what I'm very proud to talk about. Before I get there, just a background. We've got a company called HLG Global, and HLG Global is a connector. We've got attorneys and partners all over the world, and we help connect opportunities. That's what these events are important about, taking folks from different parts of the world and connecting them together, building a supply chain on the fly, if you will. And International Hemp Solutions is another company that I founded. International Hemp Solutions, or IHS, is a large company that operates in the certified seed space. So let's talk about that for a moment. The certified seed space. Do we have a CBD industry right now, or do we have an industrial hemp industry? What do you think? I think we have a CBD industry worldwide right now. In Europe, since the United States has prohibited cannabis in the 30s, the European governments have banked their seed, they've developed markets for their seed, they've developed markets for the fiber, but it was done in a controlled manner. All of a sudden, in 2014, in the United States, we passed what was called the Farm Bill. And within certain confines, the Farm Bill allowed people to produce industrial hemp, to grow industrial hemp on a large scale for the first time in the United States since the 40s. We went from 0 acres in 2014, 0 acres of industrial hemp in the United States, to nearly 100,000 acres this year in 4 years. Canada has been a leader in North America, in the Western Hemisphere, with their hemp production. They've produced over 114 to 120,000 acres per year. The European countries they do it in such small plots, smaller plots, 20-hectare plots, for example, 40-hectare plots versus hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres. But in the aggregate, all of this is leading towards where we're all going. And I want you to take a look at the hemp industry. Think about the hemp industry. Don't get fixated on the cash crop, the CBD. Don't get fixated on CBD. Look at a plant that can serve all purposes. And let me suggest very strongly that there is a market. There is distribution for all parts of the plant. One man gathers what another man spills. For example, if I take the remaining fiber and the remaining herd, I can take the lignans, the cellulose, the sugar out of that plant after I've extracted the cannabinoids, after I've prepared and utilized the seeds for sale, after I've taken the fiber off of that plant. There are existing channels and markets for every single one of those. And right now you say, but CBD, that's the high money crop. It is. But we're beginning to see these things equalize. Let me give you an example. A farmer in the United States might make $2,500 per acre if they grow a CBD crop. If they grow a crop for fiber that's not really rich in CBD, they might make $1,500 to $1,700 per acre. We're starting to see those things equalize. So as you plant and as you invest in plantations, look for crops that are multi-purpose crops. I would strongly suggest that the other part of that, and why we formed International Hemp Solutions, is because certified seed, right? Certified seed gets you what? Most importantly, crop insurance. I'm not going to go spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to go out and build a farm if I can't insure my crop. if I can't be certain that what I put in the ground is going to yield a baseline germination rate, and if I can't be certain that that's not going to test hot, you know what I mean by testing hot? Above 0.3% in the United States, 0.2% in Europe, and that varies across some of the Latin American countries. Why would you invest millions of dollars in an operation and run the risk that if I harvest that plant 5 days late, or if there's an abnormal weather event and it causes the THC to spike, I just became a criminal? That's not the way business is done, so you need to think about the plant from an all-purpose perspective. Some of the trends that we see in the industry. Across the European Union, again, for years and years and years, we've seen the European Union produce industrial hemp. We've seen them produce hemp for fiber, for food, for animal feed, protein additives. Right now, we're seeing this trend of CBD that largely took momentum in the United States shoot through the roof very, very, very progressively across Europe. And that, of course, spreads into Asia Minor and Israel and even Australia. But European countries are seeing this groundswell dramatically. There's an enormous amount of investment opportunity. There's an enormous amount of opportunity to get quality farmers to produce these products. And guess what I can do with these products? I can take a product, a cannabinoid extract, that I might source from a company in Colombia, for example, or another country. I bring that in, and I can label that product CBD, for example. You can't do that in the United States. You can't call the product CBD. You have to call it's a full spectrum or a broad spectrum hemp extract or a cannabinoid-enriched product. But in the European markets, I can go directly to the pharmacies and the distributors, and I can sell a product that says, this is rich in CBD, or eventually CBN, or CBG, some of these other cannabinoids that perform therapeutic functions in the human body. So understand that the very same product that I might source from a Colombian supplier, package in Poland, distribute in Czech Republic and Germany and Italy, it's the exact same product, but it's going to be labeled and packaged differently, jurisdiction by jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And this is the challenge. Challenges, of course, are indicative of a great opportunity. There is enormous financial opportunity to carve out that path. But what's the right path, right? Is CBD, are cannabinoid extracts, are they medicines? Are they foods? Are they supplements? What is it? What should it be? It gets even more, it should be all of the above, which is the right answer. But the problem or the challenge we see is that there are large pharmaceutical companies that have developed drugs that are almost identical to the capsule that I could buy in a store. Let me give you an example. You know this Epidiolex, right? GW Pharma, Greenwich Biosciences. They've created this drug and gotten approval through the FDA for distributing this drug. This drug is not made from industrial hemp, and that's a critical component. It's made with a marijuana extract, which just so happens to be CBD. But I take that CBD and I mix it with sesame oil, and there's a proprietary compound in there as well. That's not very different than the exact same bottle or capsule that I can buy at my grocery store or my supplement store. This presents challenges. Patents. Think about the patents that the pharmaceutical companies have on these formulas. Let me talk about that for a moment, because the patents, I believe, help us shape the distinct lanes for these products. You've got your pharmaceutical products, you've got your nutraceutical products, your natural products, your supplements. Then you kind of have this food space in between. What are the two lanes? What are the distinctions between those products? Epidiolex is the same thing that's in this capsule, but this capsule only has 25 or 50 milligrams. Epidiolex has hundreds, if not thousands of milligrams. So that's one distinction, but it's the exact same product. So what happens when the seller of those 15 or 25 milligram capsules as a food or a supplement, what happens when they get a letter from GW and that says, or somebody else that holds a patent that says, cease and desist, you're selling something that violates my patent? What happens? You have a choice. Defend yourself or look for a resolution. And the resolution is very obvious. The resolution is, hey, GW, let's make a deal. I'll give you X percentage or a royalty or something on every unit I sell. You say, why would you do that? It's the pharmaceutical companies. Don't do business. No. Why is that a good potential outcome? Because you've just cemented the two lanes. You've driven policy without having to go through the government. You've taken big, powerful pharmaceutical companies and allowed them to profit on both sides of the industry. They sell their products over here and they can profit, and then if you made a deal with them over here, that lane is maintained. They get to double dip, but both industries, both regulatory structures get to exist side by side. Those are challenges that we see happening in the EU right now. The United States is looking at a pathway through its FDA. The European Union has also designated, in March, in the middle of March, we'll see a designation from the EU about whether hemp extracts can be a novel food, meaning a food that can be an additive or an ingredient in other food products. My understanding is that those results are going to come back favorably and that this will be allowed across the EU as an additive or an ingredient. And that's a very big thing right now for beverage manufacturers, for performance candy bars, for just general protein and wellness products. That novel food designation, watch that very closely, because when that occurs, that is going to send that European market through the roof. Now, the United States, we have an unusual phenomenon with the passage of our most recent Farm Bill. Large manufacturers are coming out and they're saying, we don't care about CBD or cannabinoids right now. Everybody wants hemp. Consumers just want hemp in their products. They don't even understand what they want or why they want it. They just want hemp. They don't really understand that CBD and hemp are somewhat different things. So it's reinvigorated the hemp foods market in the US. The oils, grains, protein, those additives are coming back into the marketplace big time in the US right now. It's almost like we went back in time 30 years. And it's pretty impressive and pretty remarkable, because companies like Coca-Cola, breweries are adding hemp seed oil, not cannabinoid-rich oil, hemp seed oil to their products. Then they're using terpenes to mimic the smell and the flavor of cannabis. They're not even cannabis-derived terpenes. Terpenes are terpenes. So those are some of the trends. Latin America. One of the biggest challenges I see in Latin America as it relates to industrial hemp is there does not seem to be consumer demand at the basic level. It's an education component, perhaps, about what does this product do. So how do you reach through and sort of establish a consumer demand in Latin American countries? I don't know if I have the answer to that question, but we're talking with very smart people over the last several days. Some of the ideas have been plug into physician networks. Work with, guess who? Nationalized healthcare systems like Anvisa in Brazil. These organizations, they look at ways to save money. And if they're not putting something out into the marketplace that's potentially addictive or costly, then they're doing themselves a favor from a financial perspective, and perhaps that creates consumer demand. Local grassroots groups that talk about the medicinal or just wellness benefits every day of taking hemp. So these are some of the things that we need to see across Latin America. There's a major push right now for what? The three-letter word, CBD, CBD, CBD. I have to be, a word of caution. There are large players in this space, and you can't necessarily go in with 20 or 40 hectares and expect to make a living selling CBD. You have to be more thoughtful. I said to a gentleman last night, he says, I have 40 acres, 40 hectares. Why don't you grow for seed? Why don't you replicate your product for seed? You can sell the cannabinoids, but build up a seed stock. Sell the seed. Are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, there's not enough certified seed in the world right now, to satisfy the demand from farmers that want to plant standardized industrial hemp genetics. And it leads to a carbon credit trade, which is going to be phenomenal in the short term. Mexico is coming online, and they've moved forward very, very quickly with their FDA equivalent entity and looking at importing material. And now, because of Supreme Court precedent in Mexico, many farmers are allowed to grow in various regions across Mexico. And I believe that this is going to be a very, very interesting marketplace to look at, especially from a health and wellness perspective, because there seems to be a knowledge amongst your middle-class people, your average people in Mexico, about the benefits of CBD, perhaps because of its proximity to the United States. We talked about this. I just want to stress with you, if you're going to grow acres and acres of a product, don't just plant CBD Christmas trees, because you're going to potentially lose all of your money and have repercussions if you don't look at the seed and use standardized seed. I work with many retailers in the United States and across Europe. You know what their number one problem, number one reason that they haven't put these products on the shelf to date is because they haven't seen from the biggest CBD companies in the world that there's consistent quality supply. Consistent quality supply, which starts with genetics. It doesn't start with your processing. It doesn't start with your oil. It's 2 steps back. So you have to think big picture if you're in the cannabinoid industry. And if you're going to work in Latin America, obviously there's an important piece of working, as we heard earlier, with indigenous people and being a good community participant and a good neighbor. Friends of mine out here from One World Pharma, these guys won a humanitarian award in Colombia for working closely with indigenous peoples. These are important things that you need to think about as you're going out. You have to be a good neighbor, friend, and corporate citizen if you're going to go into countries and utilize their expertise and their farming technology. What are some of the other trends that we see? We see a lot of M&A activity in the industrial hemp space. We see large companies in Canada acquiring every single thing they can get their hands on in Europe first. Of course, you've seen them coming around mostly for THC products in this part of the world. But we've seen acquisitions by large Canadian companies, for example, in Poland, $13 million, $23 million acquisition for companies that have never made more than $500,000 or $600,000 in a year. It's good to be the owner of that business, but you have to be strong and build a strong foundation to position yourself for those types of acquisitions. But I would also suggest you've got 3 sectors of potential acquisition or investment. The cannabis industry, the dollars are large. But industrial hemp, I'm suggesting, is not just the cannabis industry. It's agriculture. It's the industrial world. Those people, those industries have a lot of capital. They're very, very interested in innovations to utilize industrial hemp. My hemp company got a call from Ford. Ford says, we want to buy 1 million acres of certified seed from you because our innovation officer wants us to use the fiber for the door paneling. It's a sound deadening effect as well, so you don't hear as much sound from the engine. We say, there's not 1 million acres of industrial certified seed in the world right now. And they don't believe that. So you have to build up their seed stock. But these are the things that are coming, and these are the potential partners. When you look at joint ventures, again, you have to understand if you're in the extract marketplace, what are you? Are you trying to work with pharma? Are you trying to work in the food space? Are you trying to be a supplement or something between food and medicine? You have to understand your lane because your genetics, your process, and your baseline content is going to be driven by those decisions and those choices. And those things come back to climate. Climate for the right seed for the right reason. You just don't grow sticky cannabis plants. You grow a plant that performs well based on your geographic location, and these are easy things to find out. It's not like this plant hasn't been around for thousands of years. It's not like many of these European countries don't have seed banks and data and information that says you can take this seed and I can compare it against a genetic mapping of the cannabis plant, and I could tell you exactly where in the world, without even putting it in the ground, how it's going to and where it's going to perform the best. Those are the things you need to be thinking about if you're going to work in large-scale farming in this space, which sets you up for joint ventures with large acquisitions, large agricultural companies, so forth and so on. But it does go back to genetics. Supply chain. I would argue that the most significant and valuable thing in the world in the cannabinoid space right now is distribution. If you can aggregate distribution through co-opetition, working together, then you can understand how the value of that comes in together. Share channels, share lanes. The demand is insatiable. Don't hoard that lane to yourself. If you work with other people, make distinguished products so that your products complement each other within that distribution channel and aggregate the heck out of it. Because if you can aggregate industrial hemp distribution channels, you've got something that nobody else in the world has in one place right now. So work together and identify those channels in many spaces and look for ways to take the high-quality product that is and will soon be coming out in greater quantities from this part of the world and moving that in to the European countries. For now, because there's a great demand there. So with that said, it was a lot to cover in a short period of time. Hemp is king. Hemp is king. Make no mistake about it. There's nothing you can do with marijuana that you can't do better with hemp. So look at hemp. The rest of the world's looking at hemp. The investors are looking at hemp. Thank you very much for your time.